Does this work? Is our virtual meeting working for you? Why doesn't it work? What could we do better? Do you have some suggestions? And also, using the idea of a shared management. You see that Nancy and I are both in this meeting and we're working with each other. Why not maybe have one of your students be your co-host every week or every session, or maybe bring in the specialist, the EAL learning support specialist. How can you be creative using your colleagues? Be mindful of the tech, what you might be having at home. Your fast internet and your fancy new laptop might not be what's happening in the other student's home. Maybe there's 6 kids all on different devices and mom and dad working from home. So be mindful of that. So what we're going to ask you to do is, Nancy, if you could put the link in the chat. And what we're going to ask you to do is to come to this Padlet here. And what might be important to your students as protocols and procedures? What do you think your kids think is important as procedures and norms? And I'm going to go to the link, which you should have in your, and what we would like to hear is clarity. Fantastic. So you're just going to click here and you're going to put, and this is a great activity to do with anybody. It's a great way for everybody to see what is happening. And also it's alive. So you get an idea of, as people are coming in and sharing, you can actually see their thinking. It could be anonymous, you could add comments. There are just different ways of doing that. And getting the kids to be involved in that is a great way for them to see it transparently communicated and available to them as they construct their understanding of what protocols and procedures would be in their context. So that's just one example of how we could do this. And now, Nancy.
Thank you, John. So moving on to Netiquette, I think we all know this. I think when John mentioned norms, a lot of people were nodding their head. But in a virtual context, we really need to take this very proactively and think about, all of us have used norms, all of us know about Netiquette, but my question to you is, when was the last time that it's been reviewed? Your virtual Netiquette in terms of your team? Where is it documented? So if someone came new to a meeting, they would know where to access it and when it was reviewed. Now we could go over all the ASCD has a wonderful article about norms. There's a lot out there about Netiquette, but I'm just going to actually take a step back and just say, within a virtual setting, ignored behavior is condoned behavior. And there's always this really famous quote on LinkedIn that talks about the culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. So if you have your norms or your Netiquette that you have within your team, I question what is done when someone does not follow these norms or the Netiquette that you've set up for this. And that is really one way that people really disengage with your virtual meetings. So for example, during your virtual meeting, you might say, everyone, can you please have your camera on? But then you have John who doesn't have his camera. I hope there's no one named John here, by the way. I don't see the whole screen. By the way, John, if you're out there, I'm not picking on you. But if there's John who all of a sudden doesn't have his screen on and no one says anything, silence is acceptance.
And I think that is really important, is once you let it go by, it's very hard to get back.
Yes.
It's much better to swallow and just say, okay, I'm not going to be very nice. This is inappropriate behavior. As you know, our norms are, you can't do this anymore. And if you still do it, I will kick you out. I think you just have to lay the red line, because once, then it becomes very challenging.
And you know what I found, John, with these norms and Netiquette that you have, this becomes a third data point. It doesn't become like, oh, John doesn't like me, that's why he's picking on me. No, that's why we had those 3 questions that are on the slide right now. Was it documented? Was it reviewed? How was it discussed? Because when you do speak to this colleague, it's not like, well, you were mad at me because blah, blah, blah. Or it's a friend of yours. You know, international schools are really small and you feel like, oh God, I was just at their house for dinner. How can I tell them they were acting like a jerk at the meeting because they didn't mute, they were really being disrespectful? Having these written norms and etiquette as a third data point then informs that team member that this is not a personal attack, but these are the agreed upon guidelines that we have within our virtual setting. And it's really, really powerful. And it actually goes back to that other quote. Taking the time in these fundamental steps allows the facilitator to go faster in the future.
And that's so important, I think, Nancy,
Yes.
bringing that up, especially with kids. Sometimes we don't spend enough time, and kids might actually need much longer to be able to deliberate and get their heads around this. And this idea of documentation reviewed and discussed is really important to really ensure that we're all on the same page with the objective or the purpose of the meeting, and that we have evidence of that. So I can only agree with Nancy about this idea of taking time. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you and to consider what we've just been talking. And think for yourself, using a scale of 1 to 10, to what degree do you as a facilitator constantly use protocols and share expectations prior and during virtual meetings? Or, from your experiences, consumes too much time from the meeting and provides less time focusing on the content? So we would like you to rename yourself. In the chat, you know how to rename yourself. You just go to your participants and right click and put a number. Where are you on this continuum? If you're 10, you're like, I use protocols, I share expectations prior to during virtual meetings. I'm religious about it. I'm consistent. I have people know exactly where they stand. Or, you know what? Too much time. I've got all this history to teach. We need to learn about Stalin. We don't have time for this. Let's get into the content straight away. Where are you in that continuum? And please rename yourself. And then we will put you into a virtual breakout room. And there you get to kind of share why you numbered yourself a certain way and what might be your rationale, or might be some of your experiences that you've experienced personally that you think would connect to this question. So are you for yes, protocols and share expectations, or are you like waste of time, have to focus on the lesson and the content? Nancy, are we ready to have a little breakout room?
Yes, we're going to have
fantastic.
We're going to have about 3 in a room. We might move you a bit because, as you know, people come and go. So please excuse us if you get dizzy because you got moved to another room. Okay, here we go.
We will put the chat in the chat the guiding questions again for you. That's so good what you said about those the norms and the facilitation. That's so important.
Third data point.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to frame it, is a third data point. Mm-hmm. I think people don't think of it as a data point, and I think that's what's so powerful, Nancy. I'm going to pop into the rooms.
I hope your conversations went well in terms of if you would use norms, if you have norms. Most people do, but they just never use them. And where's my John? I see him someplace.
I'm there. I'm hiding.
There you are.
Hey, great conversations. Thank you so much. Love to go in and just check out what people had to say. So thank you very much. And we're going to continue. And I think, Nancy, you're going to tell us.
Yes, how exciting.
Do this properly and just a bit of lag. There we go. How perfect.
Okay, here we go. You're so good. I love you. So one tool that we just used was renaming, which is very, very powerful because you can actually do that with anything. Imagine that you gave your team a text and then you decided to do the 4A protocol. So you can have them say, who would argue, who would agree, what's your assumption, and then you go into the break rooms and you can do a virtual jigsaw. You can do the same thing as we just did, which is a 1 through 10, where I've done debates where I put all the 10s together, or the 9s and 8s, and then I would put the 1s and 2s, and then I would do a recreate of the Zoom with the 10 and the 1. So renaming is one of the most powerful ways you can get the meeting really, really energized. And also the most important thing is the tech, making sure people know how to rename. Because I think we've always been at a meeting when someone goes, I can't see the share button. And you're like, it's the green one. So the tech is really important that you're aware of it. Now, another way that you can engage with the same idea of a 1 through 10 or a debate is a virtual fishbowl. Now, most of us have used fishbowls when we were face-to-face, where you'd walk into a classroom with your students, or you can do it with your staff, and the chairs would be arranged in a circle. And typically you would have a discussion point. This is another way where you can do it virtually, where attendees can discuss, they can debate, and they can create. Now, right now, due to time, I just have this on a slide, but you can do this with Miro, with Jamboard, with Mural. And most importantly, it's you as the facilitator who decides the parameters of this discussion. So for example, I could say, here's the prompt, should you use norms in meetings? And I'm only gonna allow 2 chairs at a time in the room. And I would share my screen, and I would say, with this protocol, that if you put your name on the perimeter of the circle, I know that you want to join the conversation. The reason why this allows for a seamless conversation, rather than looking for someone to raise their hand, like, okay, who's raising their hand? This way, everyone has this shared screen. They know Marie is ready to join the conversation. And then I would either have maybe an empty chair, or that would indicate to either Tom or Jackie that they would need to leave the room. But again, doing this on Mural is a faster way of doing it. I have this on a slide.
It's very visual, and I think the visual component is something that's really quite powerful. And then you actually see the movement and you see the players. There's a lot of transparency in that. So that's definitely a strategy. How you interact with digital world is different from how you interact in the physical world. I think we really need to understand that, and I think we're getting better at it. But I think we need to understand that the way we behave, Nancy and I, if we were presenting, you would be exhausted because we would be running all over the room, and you'd be running all over the room. But we're not doing that. You notice you're going into a lot of breakout rooms. So those are some things to be mindful, is that the digital world is very different how we interact. Because as human beings, when we walk in a room, physical room, there's a vibe. There's a perfume of where everybody is and where their thinking is, and that you don't get in the virtual room. So I'd like to ask Nancy to kind of unpack this idea of head, heart, and hands.
I wondered what is that makes people just really turn off in the meeting? And then John and I were talking, and we said, you know what? It goes back. And everyone's heard of this. This is from Transformational Learning. I think it came out in 1992. And we've seen this all around. But then we thought, how do you transpose this to a virtual setting? Are these the 3 characteristics of what every virtual meeting needs in order to have that connection in a virtual setting? So the first, I'm going to start with the heart. And the heart is literally that, it's the idea of feeling, that emotional attachment. What is it that makes someone want to be in that meeting? Now, I'm not saying we have to do love and hugs and do kumbaya. You know, we don't want kumbaya, but we started this meeting with a 2-minute introduction. That's all it took. We already started feeling like a community of learners. And this evokes emotion and the idea that I'm welcomed here. My voice is valued, and I'm going to belong as part of this conversation. So one criteria, heart. Think of it as feeling. Then we talk about the head in terms of what is the thinking that you, the facilitator, want. So if you're just going to have a PowerPoint with lots of bullet points, do you know what? Do they really need to be meeting virtually? Just send it an email. Ask them to look at the PowerPoint ahead of time. And then, you know, when you get them into that virtual setting, Are they going to be inquirers? Are going to be strategically planning? Do you want them to innovate? What is the thinking that you want behind the content that you presented? If you as a facilitator can't identify the thinking, then how will your attendees know what is the objective of them being there? So the thinking is very powerful. And next we have the hands, and hands can have two connotations. First is the idea of what John and I have been doing, getting you into different breakout rooms. And I actually gave two websites that are fabulous: Wonder, which John told me about, and Air Meets, which is kind of like Air Meets is you go into a virtual room and you pick the table you want to sit in. So it's like you're going into a conference room. It's really, really amazing. And John, when I talk about Wonder, that really cool like bubble, like when you hit somebody.
So Wonder is another interface where actually everybody comes in the room and then you move the bubbles together. And when they're together, then a virtual meeting room suddenly comes up and you're in a virtual meeting room. So you could have people on the side chatting, but once you put the two bubbles, which are icons of you, together, then that initiates the virtual meeting room and you can add people and have people leave too. So what we're going to do here is go ahead, Nance.
Oh no, sorry. I'm just going to continue one more with hands. Also is hands is not just physical. It's also the type of thinking that you want happening. So it's the doing. So do you want them to complete a task? Do you know this morning we heard about reflect, reset, and reinvent? That's the hands as well. That's the engagement. That's the deep thinking. That's the interaction that you want. So hands can be the physical, the work, the virtual essence of that, but it's also the doing. What is the task that you want completed? Unlike the head is the thinking, the hands is actually the task, the interaction, the intellectual execution of tasks. And again, I'll go back to our keynote from this morning: reflect, reset, reinvent. That is part of the hands as well. They go in parallel. So John, now
we're going to have you in each breakout room will focus on one, either head, heart, or hands. There's a link that's been added to the chat. So what you will see in the chat is this link that takes you to these slides, and there is here some steps. Yeah. And you can see 5 minutes breakout room, and this is an example of head. Name what? And you're going to generate some ideas and then describe how that might happen. So we are wanting you to be able to walk away with a whole bunch of new ideas that maybe you hadn't thought of. So for each discussion, identify significance of this focus to your virtual meeting, describe specific examples of descriptions on how to apply this to focus in a virtual meeting. So Nancy is going to put you into virtual breakout rooms. You have access to this. I can see a lot of people jumping in. So make sure you go to the chat room and grab this link and we're going to send you off.
Don't start yet, because the breakout room you're in is the slide that you're in. Does that make sense, everyone? Thumbs up if you get the idea what I'm saying. Yes?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So breakout room 1 would be head. So if you're in breakout room 1, you would work on that. In breakout room 2, that's hands. And breakout room 3 is heart. And you can see we have breakout room 4 is head. Breakout room 5 is hands, and breakout room 6 is heart.
Now we know this is a lot of content, so this is kind of like the springboard, because this could go on for an hour just on this section. So we're going to put you in about groups of 4 to have this conversation going, and I'm going to recreate the rooms now. I might be moving you around a bit just in case I'm off a bit. So we're going to have about, let's just check here. I'm going to open up the rooms and we might have to move a bit. Okay. Copy.
Okay, we'll see you in a few minutes. And if you're lost, we will assign you to a room. Yeah? See you in a few minutes.
Sorry, Sergio, that I got kicked out.
Okay, I think Zoom is getting tired.
We like creating chaos with the slides not being there. Wasn't that great? You walked in, you're like, where are the rest of the slides? We don't know where they went. So,
anyway, wonderful. You guys went and did a great job of accommodating with what you had. We understand that these things are very short. I think what you need to understand, we're more trying to get you to experience the different activities. Absolutely, you need more time. We only have an hour.
We have an hour.
We have a lot.
But I think the point of this is really, number one, the idea of using slides and assigning it to the breakout room. But it didn't work because I didn't have enough slides. But we won't even talk about that. That goes on the other side. The slides were there this morning, by the way. John deleted them. He did. But the point is, how do we get people engaged? They're responsible for a slide to add their feedback. Number two, this becomes a reference point for the next meeting. This can become a PDF. You can make it a slideshow. And the best thing about this is everyone had a voice. You weren't listening to John the whole time. Thank goodness. Because we just drive him crazy.
Yeah, really. I would not attend the meeting if I had to hear my voice.
I'd be like, I'm out of here. That would be wrong.
Anyway, what again is important is the heart is the emotion. It's the social emotional connections that you build. And those are really important because the heart is what is the center for us. And it's the soul and the heart. So what do you do to engage that soul and heart where there's that connection? You want to come back. You feel like you're developing a relationship. What are you doing to construct that? Then, of course, we have the head. What are the learning outcomes? What's the purpose? Why are you in this meeting? What do you want to get out of the meeting? And then the hands, as Nancy said, it might feel like it's the hands, but it's the activities, the tactile. What are you constructing? What kind of artifacts might you generate based on this meeting? So these are just really important things to consider, this heart, hands, and head. And what we're going to do is continue on our amazing adventure. And we are going to share our screen. And what we want to do is talk to you a bit about what is maybe a 30-second takeaway from what you've heard that Nancy shared about the head, the hands, and the heart. So just unmute and share.
Just let it out. Anything that you would.
Go ahead. As I stated in the chat, we didn't have enough time. But again, we can learn through the mistakes that we experience. I don't know enough about head, heart, and hands, but it's intrigued me. I want to find out more, especially about the idea of transformational learning and how that's tied into head, heart, and hands. I love the metaphor, the way you guys explained it. So I don't want to take up too much time, but that's my.
You have 30 seconds. You did a great job, Mark. Fantastic. Succinct. Well done. Give him a round of applause.
Yay, Mark.
Well done. Thank you, Mark. Somebody else, 30 seconds.
I want to jump in and say that while I don't know a lot about head, heart, and hands, what I'm walking away with is the need to focus your meetings and make sure that everybody knows what they're about, what they're supposed to do, create some connections so that it all fits together and you're not sitting there thinking, why am I here?
Mm-hmm. And thank you. Wonderful, Sarah. The thing also is it comes back to that point that we said to invest time in setting that up. To make sure you can't just have heart, hand, and head if you don't have protocols and norms and don't build this thing. And I think, Sarah, what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, is that once you start building that up, it's like it's a structure you're kind of developing a continuity and building capacity as a community of learners, because that head, heart, and hand just grow. A heart grows. The more it beats, the more it's there, it gets bigger. So I think definitely, Sarah, I like the way you bring about that point. One more, 30 seconds. Who's ready?
I would like to share.
Annie, thank you.
And say that enthusiasm is very contagious. So being here with you, it didn't give me a space to think on going into my Amazon account and start looking for more things to buy.
Yes.
So
you know, Nancy's been shopping while she's doing this. You have no idea. She just bought herself a Louis Vuitton bag. Guess what? But no, thank you. Yes. And I think, you know, kids, and it's hard, you know, we're tired after a long day and to always be on, but I think that energy can be really helpful and, you know, bringing kids out. So we're giving you 30 seconds and you're volunteering, but know in a class that there might be some way. So you might say, if you don't feel comfortable talking, why don't you put your thoughts in the chat or send me an email or go to this Google Doc. Don't always give one avenue for share out. Make sure there are multiple venues and leverage the chat, or maybe change your name to what you're feeling.
Exactly.
So those are some examples. Yeah.
And again, going back to triple track, what we try to do is, again, how could you use this within, we did it within our learning. How would you use this with your students? And then lastly, your colleagues. So the idea of having this shared doc, having this idea of this collective capacity that we are developing. And for me, the most important thing is really looking at, do your virtual meetings have an aspect of those three? Are you looking at connections, you know, the great quote by George Couros, relationships, relationship, relationships. Are you as a facilitator or the teacher knowing what type of thinking you're expecting of your students or your colleagues? And lastly, where is it? What is the doing? What is the hands that you want? And using those filters actually helps your meetings in terms of getting more precise. And really, we've all heard that expression that you zoomed out. I don't get zoomed out. I just hate bad Zoom meetings. I mean,
exactly. And I think
seriously,
that's so
if it's
important,
a good meeting,
Nancy.
give me a drink. I'm here, I'm ready. But, you know, I really blame it on the facilitator. So if you guys give us bad feedback, then I know we didn't do well. Right, John?
So I think that's so important. Is Zoom often, or virtual meetings are, you know, they're bad meetings. No, it's not the meetings. It's the facilitation that's bad. It's just a tool. And so one thing we know that in a physical world, body language can be really important, and you can really understand your community of learners by the body language that they might share out in the physical space. But what do you do in a virtual environment? And this is an activity that's really good to do with teams as you start building that community that Sarah had talked about. Is where you do this thing, count 1 through 20. So let me explain what we're going to do. I'm going to stop sharing. So we are all in a room, and we're going to try to count from 1 to 20, but nobody can say the same number twice. So we have to work it out together. So if Annie says 1 and then Edith says 1 again, we start over again. So we have to work out. So look at the screen and really think of how we're going to do this. This can be very telling with kids, because what is the body language and their facial expression. And then you can also get them really being attentive, because they're so worried. They're trying to see what the other person might say, or they might see the lips starting to move. And then they're really like, okay. So we have 2 panels. So it's going to be a little tricky.
It is tricky.
We're going to have to flip between the 2 or in the chat or something. You guys work it out. Are we ready? 1 through 20. First of all, does everybody understand what we have to do? Can you just give a thumbs up, be it virtual or physical? Okay. So somebody's going to start, and I'm actually going to assign somebody to start. Katie O'Cammon, is that right?
O'Gorman, yeah.
O'Gorman, my apologies. Katie is going to say the first number and kick it off, and then we'll see where we go. Let's go, Katie. Over to you.
Okay. 1,
2,
3.
Let's start again. Katie, go again.
Okay. 1, Christy.
2.
Oh, I was trying to, sorry, go ahead. I
So
messed
we're
it up.
at
I'm
two.
sorry. One.
Okay, go ahead, Kate.
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
Start again.
Start again.
1, Christy.
2,
3.
3.
See, but there's some strategies coming up. One is Katie is calling out a number. Other people are putting their hands up. Some people are actually typing in the chat. So why don't we work this out? I'll give you 30 seconds. You have chat, you have voice, and you have physical hands. Let's see what we got here. Can we do this? Okay, we have some people thinking this through. Well done. Okay, let's go, Katie. Let's try again.
Can I say what I was trying to do?
Yes.
I was trying to give the next person. I was trying to pass it to the next person. So I
Can we do
love
that?
idea.
We actually do that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, let's do
Okay.
was the one I
Can we
kept-
yell out the
Let's
name?
go.
Yes.
Katie, go
All right,
ahead.
1, Christy.
2, Karina.
4.
4.
We have
Follow the instructions, everyone. If you get your name called out, then you yell out the number.
okay. We're gonna try
Christy.
one more time, guys.
Okay.
One more time.
Okay, 1, Christy.
2, Karina. 3, Alejandra.
4, Mariana.
5, La Olivares.
6, Diana.
7, Annette.
8, Gaby.
9, Saida.
9.
Oh, we have
All
9.
right.
Okay.
All right.
Guys, give yourselves a round of applause. Well done. Well done. Excellent. Excellent. So thank you very much. And hopefully this is just one little strategy. What you've noticed is over this session, there's been a lot of content. And what we would like to do now is just open this up to questions and answers in kind of an open forum where you get a chance to talk to Nancy or I about some of the questions, maybe some feedback, or maybe some things that you would like us to unpack further regarding this. So it's really, the floor is open. I think the best way, as we would like you, is to raise the hand. You know how to raise your hand virtually, and if not, you can do old school and just raise your hand. And Nancy and I will definitely keep track and make sure that the different voices. So one thing to always have in any virtual meeting is your best friend is the Post-it and the pen. Don't forget the Post-it and the pen. And you will notice my screen. If you were in my room right now, there are Post-its everywhere with different people's names and things to do. So the floor is open and we are open to questions. We have about 6 minutes together. So open-ended questions, go for it. And if you want to write them in the chat, that's
Annie.
more than fine.
John, I see Annie's hands up.
Annie,
you're on
thank
mute,
you.
honey. Famous quote of 2020, everybody. I think you're on mute.
Sorry. For staff meetings, if you want to like not make them so boring, and like you were saying, what really brought out to me was that could that be sent in an email? But then like my question kind of would be like, then you would, I feel like we would also be sending so many emails all the time with information, you know, like how to
So I think one
balance
thing,
that.
yeah, that's a good question. I think the one thing is you leverage your digital ecosystem. So Nancy, head of communications, has a staff portal. People know they go to the staff portal. Everything, she is religious about hounding her principals by Thursday that they have the blog. They know Thursday morning when they wake up, if they don't have the blog, Nancy's going to be at their door. So I think that's one thing that definitely is important. Thank you, Lily. So I think definitely is understanding what communication channels work and don't work, and asking your audience what works for them and doesn't work, I think is really important, Annie. So it's a good question, but I think is what can you do to better understand what works and doesn't work so those meetings can be more engaging, so you can do
Absolutely.
that communication another time.
You know how
Mark, you had your hand up.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say to Annie, I always think of it as meetings should be focusing on teaching and learning. Operational, put in the email. So if this meeting is not going to impact or influence student learning, why am I here? If we're going to be talking about the decorations in the hallway, that's operational. So look at your meeting agendas and say, this will impact teacher learning, teacher practice, student learning, then you meet. So that's one criteria to use when looking at your agenda items. Sorry, John, you called on somebody?
Yeah, Mark.
Thank you.
I just had
You're
a
welcome.
question. Nancy mentioned earlier in the presentation, icebreakers, move away from those and use inclusion activities. And I got some ideas from what you guys did, but are there other resources out there where I could find those inclusion activities?
Yeah, there's a great, go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, sorry. Adaptive Schools actually has a live binder, which is called Inclusion Activities. I'll put it in the link, the chat. I think they're brilliant. Adaptive school training, I think, is one of the most powerful any teacher could take if you are facilitating for your classroom or as a leader. And what's great about these protocols, they can be used in a virtual setting. There is an incredible company called Miravia.com, and they actually do training that is only about using these protocols in a virtual setting. And I also, Mark, included another website, which is Play on Purpose, which is another, I'm using them all the time now, Play on Purpose. And they just have these energizing ways of looking at facilitation, but again, making sure it's based upon a learning outcome. So those are two, and I'll get the live binder. Sorry, John, you were going to say something. Did I lose John? Oh, sorry, there you are.
And Washington, Jeff, and they have done some fantastic work that's free, PDFs about engaging icebreakers versus setting the tone and engaging learners. So that's another one, Shifting Schools. Thank you, Mark, for your question. Appreciate that. Priscilla.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I love your presentation. I'm honestly like really enthusiastic about it. You contagious the energy. So thank you so much. And I also wanted to ask you, I love the interacting activities, but do you recommend one, or do you have an idea of one that is like focused on also interactive, but for science? Like the one with the number is excellent, but I'm wondering if there's one that is more focused on maybe science or maybe the topics that we're seeing in class.
I think a lot of these protocols, you first have to define your learning outcome. So even if it's science or if it's social studies or if it's history, first define the learning outcome. If you go to National School Reform as well, I'll put the chat in there, they have multiple protocols, but again, categorized by what is the outcome that you want. And it goes back to the head. What is the thinking that you want of your students or your staff? And that's how the protocols are arranged. They're not really arranged by content area. So I'll put that link in. They're fabulous. And they're super easy. And they're all downloadable, if that's a word.
Thank you so much.
Nancy, I just found the link, so I just put it in there. I just found it.
John, we're at 45, and I think Lily wanted to show one last slide, so we have to say we have to get Lily.
You guys were awesome.
Oh my goodness! What, we have to do our thing, John?
Yes.
Ready?
So we have a
come
thing
on, John.
That every time you have to remember we're not physical, but we're going to get physical together.
Let's
so put
get
your hands
physical,
on the side.
Physical. Okay, everyone, hands on the side of your box. And on the count of
put
three,
your hands on the side and pop out and give a five. One, two, three. High five.
High five. You guys were great. 1, 2, 3 again on the side of your cameras. Ready? 1, 2, 3. High five. That's how you leave a meeting, everybody. And I think we have to pass it over to Lily. Lily, where are you?
Lily, we've lost you.
No, I'm right here.
Lily's been shopping.
Lily's been shopping.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you to Nancy Lhoest-Squicciarini and John Mikton for sharing your experience and knowledge with us today. It is time for us to end this session, so the next one can begin. Actually, we have a break now. It's lunchtime for 45 minutes until the next session. Please fill out the feedback form link in the description of the session. And if you would like to continue the chat and networking with each other, please join us in the network session from 3:45 to 4:30, according to your time zone or the time zone where you are. And a link to the Zoom room can be found in the Live Curious and Go Beyond website. We hope you have a strong continuation of learning, and thank you very much. See you soon.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Yes, good to see everybody. Be well,
Thank
be
you
safe.
very much.
Now you can go shopping.
Thank you so much.
Now you can shop.
Go and shop. Go and shop.
Thank you.